How do you make cinematic shots? Episode 12 in Season 1 of the anime series Chainsaw Man showcases many examples of dynamic cinematic shots, so let's try to break them down. In cinematic shot number 1, we see a POV shot from Aki looking at Himeno during a flashback scene. The background perspective cues seen on screen left help us to get a sense of spatial depth within the frame. Aki's hand on screen right appears from off screen, acting as a foreground element, and this helps to inform us of the POV. Himeno is looking directly toward camera, and the camera is placed right around her eye level. The camera lens could be a 50mm lens to approximate the field of view for a normal human eye, which would align with the POV shot choice. In cinematic shot number 2, we see a wide-angle shot with the camera placed high above the ground and slightly turned downward, creating a down shot. This composition helps us to establish the scene and allows us to see how the characters are oriented toward each other and within the environmental space. The pipes in the background give us a sense of spatial depth as they disappear backward into Z-space. The camera lens is like a wider angle camera lens, perhaps 35mm, that allows us to see a wider field of view. In cinematic shot number 3, the camera is placed at a high angle looking down at Aki, who is kneeling on the ground. This gives us a sense of the difference in scale between the devil and Aki. This also creates a dramatic sense of difference in proportion that informs us of the tension between the characters and the ensuing conflict. The camera lens is likely still a wider angle lens to create this wider field of view. In cinematic shot number 4, we see Akane placed in the center of the frame in a symmetrical composition within the corridor. The liquid gore from the slain devil pours into the frame from off camera, acting as blurred out foreground elements. The background has some industrial pipes, giving us perspective cues to see a little bit of spatial depth within the composition. The drama within the shot is highlighted by the liquid gore raining down in front of Akane as she looks toward the camera with a stunned expression. The camera's placed a little below her eye level. In cinematic shot number 5, we see a high-angle down shot with the camera placed high above the ground, looking down on Denji and Power inside the elevator. The strong perspective cue lines formed by the elevator walls helps us to see the strong 3-point perspective grid, and this aligns with how Denji and Power's bodies are drawn within the composition. A wider angle camera lens is likely being used in this shot to get the field of view. In cinematic shot number 6, we see Power in a close-up with blood elements that are acting as blurred-out foreground elements. There are few dynamic perspective cues within the shot, since a longer camera lens is likely being used to compress the space within the composition. The camera is focusing on the high drama of Power's acting shown through her movement and facial expressions, along with the blood splatter. In cinematic shot number 7, we see Denji, in Chainsaw Man form, standing in a dramatic upshot where the camera is placed very low on the ground, around the level of Denji's feet. The sky plane is visible, with clouds in the sky, and we're likely also seeing a Dutch angle composition with the camera tilted at an angle. The building in the background on screen right helps us see the tilted angle. A wide-angle camera lens is likely being used for this composition. In cinematic shot number 8, we see Denji fighting Samurai Sword on top of a moving train, and there is significant motion blur being applied to the background surroundings. Action lines are used to enhance the strong poses of both characters, and the camera keeps the characters in focus so that our eyes can clearly read the ensuing action. Most of the perspective cues in the blurred-out background, as seen in the buildings on screen left, appear to move toward one-point perspective, toward the horizon line. In cinematic shot number 9, we see Samurai Sword in the foreground on screen left and Denji kneeling in the midground with his back to the camera. The camera is placed a little above Samurai Sword's head and pointed downward so that we see a slight high-angle downshot on the deep space inside the train car. The perspective cues formed by the lines of the train car interior helps us to see the spatial depth within the composition. A wider angle camera lens is likely being used to get this field of view. In cinematic shot number 10, this frame is part of a moving camera shot that combines 2D traditionally drawn animation with a 3D set. We see parallax effects and a change in perspective cues of the background, so the camera appears to move like a live-action camera on a physical set. Denji moves toward camera, going into an attack against Samurai Sword. The deep space within the train car is informed by the strong perspective cues in the train car interior. Once again, this visual style of combining 3D sets with 2D animation works well within the series to give us filmmaking that is closer to live-action movies. So overall, these technical descriptions of each shot helps break down the elements of what makes them cinematic. The language of film, as shown in composition, lens choice, and camera movement, are well executed in this episode to heighten the drama and action.